kids and kiddies, welcome to Joker's Playhouse, the place for mischief, mayhem, and all that other fun stuff. You know, Joker's a little sad tonight, because every time he turns around, some Hollywood hack is trying to make money off of his good name. Well, you know, Jacko was fine, and that poor Ledger boy, well, he was pretty fun in a stabby sort of way. And if anyone brings up that Jared Leto jerk, they get an acid pie in the face. Of course, the only one who ever truly captured my boyish charms was that adorable little Mark Hamill. That man puts the giggle in my laughing gas. So let's take a look at who the latest chump is, shall we? How do you say this, Jacko-ween Pahonikes? Holly, get my glasses! That's better. Let's see. Joaquin Phoenix! Oh boy, good luck. That guy's crazier than I am. Whoops, that's my cue. Gotta go.
Alrighty, well, welcome to Hugh's Reviews. Sorry for the technical difficulties, folks. And speaking of technical difficulties, for years now, the DC movies have been telling us that they were meant to be dark and gritty, when what they delivered was dumb and ugly. It took the director of The Hangover to show him how it's done. So let's talk about 2019's Joker. The 70s were rife with brilliant directors who challenged norms at every turn. Instead of flat-out good versus evil narratives, they delved into character studies of some of the seemingly worst of humanity. Mobsters, bank robbers, psycho killers, violent and irredeemable monsters, and made them not only human, but at times pitiable. Not to condone their actions, but simply to study what made them tick as people. Not only did you have Scorsese and Ridley Scott, but Sidney Lumet and a slew of others. And every once in a while, a director rises up to take that torch and carry it through the rat-infested gutter to glory. In 2019, Todd Phillips is that director, and Joker is that movie. Yes, it steals from greater works, but it becomes its own monster, and gives us a fresh take on an old style, and an old character. Of course, a film like this cannot come without controversy. Just like Scorsese's films, which were politically picked apart over and over, while some people missed the point entirely, Joker is going through the same birthing pains. Some people are saying this movie is a glorification of mass shooters, while others are saying it is a cautionary tale on how to prevent them. Some are deriding it as outright class warfare propaganda, and others seem to think it's a hard right-wing pro-vigilante justice flick. I personally don't think Joker is any of these things. It's a warning, a condemnation against modern media frenzy and the way we splash mass murderers across the screen, eagerly suckling at the bloody teat of gossip and controversy like vampire babies. After every horrific act, there is a 24-hour news cycle that talks them over endlessly, and on social media, every tweet, Facebook post, hopes and prayers, pap, and protest is connected to the crime they committed, where before, those same people barely got a glance on the street. Arthur says it best in this film. What happens when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that stomps on him every single day? And by extension, a society that hungers for more gory details? You get what you deserve. In this age of reality TV, social media overload, some are forgotten, and only when those forgotten few are at their most hyperbolic and wicked are they acknowledged, nearly worshipped as minor pagan deities, with offerings of attention and historical relevance. You glorify these people when they become monsters, where before you just ignored them. This is nothing new, and debate over art and reality is nothing new. What should be allowed? What should be talked about? What should we do as a people, as a culture? Scorsese went through it, and the debate was just as flaccid and impotent as it is now, because no one wants to face the hard truth. It just is, and it won't stop, not ever, because we as a culture thrive on controversy and ugliness. Joker is a slightly exaggerated mirror of our own world. The reason many find it distasteful is because it hits too close to home. It is too real for the philosophically minded do-gooders, or for the coldly indifferent pick-yourself-up-by-your-bootstraps types among us to take. It is a character study focusing on a single man, and perhaps it is an ugly reflection of ourselves. It asks one question, and one question alone. How far can a man be pushed before he breaks? In the words of another rendition of the same character, it only takes one bad day. The right bad day, a little push, and then you're just like him. If you're looking for a comic book movie where there's a bright light at the end of the rainbow, or a caped crusader to swoop in and save you, this ain't your movie. There is nothing but disillusionment, fear, and pain to be found within this film, and maybe a little humor if you're the type who finds that sort of thing funny. Joker stars Joaquin Phoenix in the role of a lifetime. He plays Arthur Fleck, a failed comedian and party clown who lives with his ailing mother. All around him, the city is falling into madness, and he right along with it. He is mentally ill and finds himself without proper treatment. He is in pain every hour of every day. All he wants is a little tenderness in the dark tomb of his world, and perhaps to find a smile unforced by the stigma of society. What we have here is a forgotten style of filmmaking. The nihilistic no man's land you once found in films like Raging Bull and Taxi Driver. And director-writer Todd Phillips is not only aware of that comparison, he was aiming for it. He specifically cast Robert De Niro as smarmy Late Show host Murray Franklin in a direct reference to his part as Rupert Pupkin in Scorsese's King of Comedy. Certain camera angles are straight from the 1970s film revolution playbook, and other shots are his and his alone. When we see Arthur walking despondently home, he always climbs up the filthy steps to his apartment building in the dark, struggling also with his own internal darkness. But when he becomes the Joker, he is descending those steps in brilliant daylight, mirroring his gleeful descent into true madness. You see, there's a part of mental illness no one ever wants to talk about, and that's the sweet relief some feel in giving into it. It takes a lot of effort to deal with certain conditions. The wrong medications can make you constantly feel sick or cause massive fluctuations in your physical well-being. The constant need for self-control and counseling makes you feel like there will never be an end to your struggle. You always feel like an outsider. For some, just putting that burden down and letting their sanity go, or even attempting to take their own lives, is almost a relief by comparison. I have spoken at length to people who were suicidal, and to those who reached out for help after a mental break, and some of them tell me that there was a moment, just at the breaking point, when a euphoric peace washed over them. There was no right, there was no wrong, there was only having the power to control their destiny gripped in their now strong hands. Perhaps it is an oversimplification of the matter, but you can see that when Arthur gives in to his demons. A dam breaks, and he finds himself living perpetually in that moment as the Joker. He lives now with an incomprehensible internal logic that makes sense only to him. He even mentions at one point that he felt better when he was in an institute, and that he feels better once he stops taking his meds. Perhaps because he was on the wrong medication, and all it did was make him worse, and no one cared enough to find him the right help. Perhaps if he could have found the right balance, he would have thrived instead of crumbled. But we will never know. We see him as a monster, but he still sees himself as a clown telling jokes. And the joke, even if it kills him, is the most wonderful gift he feels he can give to the world. He doesn't think he's bad or evil. He thinks he's funny. So why aren't you laughing? What is most fascinating about this movie is the way it plays with our expectations of the Batman lore. It makes Arthur Fleck, who eventually becomes the mass-murdering Joker, so pathetic that when he finally snaps, though you don't condone his actions, you find yourself understanding them. This is also a more grounded version of the Joker than we've seen before. You see, people forget that the Joker does not have superpowers. He's not inhumanly strong. He can't fly. His only power, if you want to call it that, is a reckless abandon in reaching his goals and the cleverness to outwit the authorities. This may be the first time that was so harshly apparent. Even Heath Ledger's Joker was placed in a world with more fantastical elements, thereby making him more fantastical as well. And then you have the way the movie portrays Thomas Wayne, Bruce Wayne's father. Every version of Wayne we've ever seen, other than the occasional alternate universe storyline in the comics, shows him as almost saintly. A doctor, a brilliant businessman, a loving father who cared about the poor and tried to save the city from its own darkness before he was tragically gunned down. Bruce Wayne always sets the man up on a golden pedestal, and not a negative word about him is to be found. Well, not so here. Here we find a harsher Thomas Wayne, who declares righteous good intentions to the press out of one side of his mouth, while demeaning the less fortunate out of the other. This is no saint, but neither is he a villain. He's just a guy with flaws, a slightly stuck-up, well-meaning man who is a product of his fortunate circumstances, as much as Arthur is a tragic product of his unfortunate ones. The music and the script also play with our expectations. Audiences going into a comic book movie have come to expect big bombastic scores, with heroic swells and uplifting themes, and scripts peppered with quippy one-liners. Don't look for that here. The orchestral score is sparse, haunting and edgy, with long, drawn-out notes that sound ever so slightly off. And when popular music is used, it is done in a way that enhances the mood of the cinematography, and not just to put a bouncy pop song in your ears. The script, meanwhile, is just as stripped out, and there is not one more word said than is needed. There is only one word that can be used to describe the screenplay. Patient. There's never a need to jump from one line to the next or from one scene to the next in an attempt to keep our ADD-addled brains engaged. It takes its time building tension, and just when you find yourself cringing down into your seat, knowing you can't take the pressure 1 second longer, it explodes like a birthday balloon pierced by a needle. Before this movie came out, I was worried that the trailers would not represent the finished film. DC has a history of that. Good trailers, terrible movies. My wife and I discussed the trailer when it first came out, and we both agreed that if DC could keep their interfering mitts off it, it looked amazing. I said that all I wanted was a haunting character study of one man's slow descent into madness. She said that she hoped it was so disturbing that she needed to watch Hello Kitty or something like that afterwards just to get it out of her head. Well, we learned to be careful what we wished for because Joker delivers on that and then some. It surpassed all of my expectations and took me as a viewer in a direction I was truly not ready for. This is the first movie in years that, even though I know an awful lot about the character, I could not predict it. Even though the movie takes inspiration from various comic book sources, most notably The Killing Joke, it is completely its own monster. Phoenix now challenges Ledger as the perfect film Joker. And yes, I know that's borderline blasphemy, but it's true. If Phoenix doesn't get at least an Oscar nomination, then you can be assured it was politically motivated. When I heard he was slated for the part, I said the casting was possibly too perfect. Because, as we've seen before, Mr. Phoenix can be a bit off-kilter in real life. But just so you know, nobody did Joker better than Mark Hamill. And they never will. My only real complaint would be that it has too many endings. Yep, it pulled a Return of the King on us. It ends perfectly, and then it keeps going. And then the ending wraps, and then we get another one and it ends again. Each of the finales were fine in and of themselves, but it felt like they had 3 and they couldn't pick one, so they used them all. Or maybe the joke's on me and they did that on purpose to screw with us. Who knows? Either way, it is still the best movie I've reviewed this year, and I encourage you to go see it. But only if you think you can handle it. And please do not take your kids to see this movie. For goodness sakes, I thought people would have learned after Deadpool, but apparently there are still some brainless dinks out there who think that just because it's a comic book movie, it's fine for their kids. Rated R does not mean really cute clown. Unless you think smeared brain matter and burst eyeballs are a good day at the movies for your kid, leave them at home. On a last, more serious note, if you or anyone you know is suffering from a psychological disorder, please, seek help. I did, and it saved my life. And that is it tonight for Hugh's Reviews. As always, I would like to thank our wonderful underwriters at Moons of Vega Photography. Drop them a line on Facebook, let them know Hugh sent you. And if you have any suggestions for movies you'd like me to take a look at, send me a note at WXPI Radio of Williamsport. As always, happy viewing. Hey, wait a minute. What are you doing back? Hey,
Miss me?
No, stop! Stop!